Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hello, Renegade Thinkers. If you're a CMO, this is literally the best of times and the worst. The best part is that businesses need you more than ever to drive growth, to drive innovation, to inspire employees, and to engage customers, all the while building this mysterious thing called brand. The worst part is the lingering myth that marketers can work miracles in any situation, and more specifically, the myth that they can increase sales even in the face of serious product and service issues. In this episode, we're going to explore the boundaries of the CMO role, looking first at a problem that frankly no amount of marketing probably could have solved. And then we're going to look at a more positive story about how the guest on the show actually helped drive innovation in an 85, 86, 87-year-old company. And what's especially cool is that we're going to have both conversations with the same guest, and that's Karen Jones, the CMO of Ryder Systems. So Karen, welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite.
Thanks, Drew. Glad to be here.
So this is a show that's been a long time in the making. We tried to connect at CES. You lost your voice. We've had sort of various technical challenges, but we are here now and ready to rock and roll.
Great.
Okay. So I was looking at your LinkedIn profile yesterday, and I couldn't help but notice you're a big brand person. I mean, you did 17 years at HP, 6 years at DHL, 3.5 years at NRG Energy, which I had to look up is a big company, and 6.5 years at Ryder. Now, I'm just curious, was that by choice or did it just sort of happen?
Oh, wow. Yeah, so everything I've done, I've chosen. But at the end of the day, I don't know that I would have planned to be in transportation and logistics. I don't know. We all have our plans, and sometimes they turn out very differently than what we had originally expected. But I have had some wonderful opportunities to move from a couple of different industries, which I think is pretty awesome. So for me, it rounds me out. I always say that marketing is marketing wherever you go. It's the industry and the challenge of learning a different industry that makes it really fun.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And for those that listen a lot, you kind of know I've got this ADD thing. And so I love new challenges and just the notion of doing one, which is why I could never be client side. I just need multiple challenges. But I think it's really cool. I think it also takes a special kind of CEO to recognize that you have a marketing toolkit and you have a methodology that you can apply. And that process will work, frankly. Almost with anything. But I do think, and I've noticed this in it, there are some peculiarities that are important to know. So when and I'm wondering for you, when you say marketing, you could do marketing everywhere. That's a skill. Is there a little hidden superpower in there that they bring to these to your engagements? Because you stay. I mean, you outlast the average stay of a CMO by a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question, Drew. I don't know if it's a secret staying power, but I do think no matter what company you go to, and these days marketing is held to a pretty high standard for returning value to the company. And I think if you don't get in quickly and determine very quickly how you're going to return value, you don't last. And when I say return value, it's all about driving new eyeballs, new sales, and clearly new revenues. So I think that's been the secret to my success in many instances. But having goals, getting those goals on your CEO scorecard, and then driving your marketing organization to be accountable to them has been kind of the trajectory that I've been on.
And what's interesting, you could say those things, and yes, we need to drive the business. But marketing has so many dependencies. I mean, you can't change the product necessarily. At least when you arrive. You can't change customer service, at least when you arrive. You can't change culture. And so It's interesting to me. I'm wondering if, and this is, I don't even know if my setup made sense, but have you seen the role evolve? Because again, right? Because there are all these extrinsic factors that you can't control, and there seem to be more of them.
Right. Well, I think, again, kind of going back to the secret of success, I think marketing, unfortunately, a lot of times is relegated to this, and I hate to use these words, but this airy, fairy, feel good kind of stuff. And there are a lot of the divisional presidents and some of my peers who, initially weren't too ready to embrace it. But again, kind of going back to sitting side by side with those peers and understanding what their biggest challenges are in the business, and then crafting marketing initiatives that help them drive what they're trying to get to has been, again, kind of the staying power of my success in many of the jobs that I've been in. So tough to do. And, I think marketing still, no matter what, brings insights because we tend to be much closer to the customer. Evolving those insights and bringing them back to the business, I found is a really powerful tool. And then being able to sit with those divisional presidents and really understand what their revenue goals are and how together we can create a winning solution is really important these days.
So it sounds that initially they're cynical. They go, yeah, marketing. And then you sit down with them, you find out some insights, you help them and grow their sales and make them look like heroes.
Yes.
And then you get to go, marketing's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. But I think it's more than insights today, Drew. I think it's also we have the power through data and analytics like we've never had before in our marketing organization. So it's not only customer insights, but it's actual real hardcore data. And it gets us out of this airy-fairy kind of feel-good emotional stuff. Not that that's not incredibly important, as we know as marketers. But I think when you're dealing with guys who are about dollars and cents and financial reporting every day, having your powder dry on real statistical insights and data analytics to support that becomes a really powerful combination for marketers these days. And it wasn't always that way.
Right. I mean, one, the data wasn't available.
Exactly.
And what's interesting to me on that, and then I want to move into the real topic at hand, is that there's also a chance that you could be buried in data. And
Yes.
and I interviewed a CEO, the CEO from Pega, who's a brilliant guy, and his comment and advice to CMOs was, be careful about overwhelming everybody with data.
Yes.
Let's keep big picture here and show how the data connects to the strategy. But I'm curious in your thoughts on what data do you think that you share as the CMO matters to the C-suite?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important when you're trying to sell anything in from digital tools to anything, having first customer insights and feedback that have directly come from research that you've done. Two is showing the habits and behaviors of what your customers are actually doing. I mean, the web is such a powerful tool today to be able to show you what customers are searching on, where they're actually spending their time, and what they're actually raising their hand to learn more about. It's really hard to fight with those facts and statistics. And you are able to narrow down specifically what data points are compelling and important based on what your customers are doing with their experience with you online. So there's again, carefully, I agree. Data for data's sake is never good, but data with an impact that resonates with your customers and observing what your customers are doing, I find wins every time.
Yeah, it's funny. Often the conversations that I have with CMOs is that people say brand is fluffy and so forth until the CEO is somewhere where someone says to him, "Hey, I saw that really cool billboard that you did. That made me laugh. Thank you so much for that." Right. They go, "Wait, this," and it's
did that.
Yeah, and it's so funny. So while data matters, it's these anecdotes, these stories that sort of are still carry the day, even in this world of strategy. It's amazing to me that that's the same conversation, because we would have had that conversation 20 years ago, right? Anyway, all right. So I want to get at this. You spent some time at DHL, and one of the things that we used to say, it was whispered in the halls of JWT, and it was one of these things that just sort of resonated with me, and I can't tell you why. Is, there's nothing like a great ad to kill a faulty product, and I never had an example to share. And I want you to take us back to the DHL situation. This was several years ago, and all those people are probably gone by now. And it was just it was a business decision that was made, right?
Right.
And so talk a little bit about the situation, and because this really speaks to the limitations of marketing.
Yeah. I think not every lesson you learn in business is a resounding success. And I actually think, Drew, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes in many ways, shapes, and forms. But the DHL story is really an interesting one, because DHL is probably the largest logistics and express company in the globe, actually bigger than FedEx and UPS. But in the U.S. market, they just didn't have the capability to domestically deliver a package. So when I went to the company in 2004, we had made an acquisition of another company to really get off the ground quickly. So instead of organic growth, we did acquisition growth, and that would be a good strategy for a lot of companies. But the reality is we did not have the operational capabilities in the company that we bought to really deliver significantly better than the incumbent competition here in the U.S. And listen, when you go up against FedEx and UPS, you better bring your Kevlar vests, because those are the behemoths, right? So, we strategized about what we needed to do to really come into the market and take over. And we did an amazing job with a lot of money to get the brand kicked off in the U.S. And we were here in the U.S., but it was an international capability only. So when we added the domestic capability, we needed to tell the world that we were a third alternative to the other two big incumbents. We did probably some of the most creative advertising I've ever done in my life. And we actually put the competition in our television commercials, because when you're a third tier player, you really have nothing to lose by acknowledging your competition. So it was quite aggressive. The moral of the story is that we built more new business than we could actually handle. But the challenge was the service level and the product offering just was not good enough to compete with what people were used to from FedEx or UPS. So, the old adage, the quickest way to go out of business is to advertise a bad product, is really kind of what happened to us in the U.S. And though a lot of great people, a lot of great effort went into it, we just didn't have the scale and the capability to do and compete with our competition effectively. So a huge lesson in what not to do. Make sure your products are competitive, reliable, and if you're going to come in as a third player in the market, make sure you have a better offering than your competition. So.
Well, or certainly a unique one. And we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come right back and spend a little more time on that, because I love the notion. By the way, I'm tired of learning from my mistakes. I really do. I don't need, I'm too old to learn from my mistakes. I really want to learn from my successes now. All right, we'll be right back. Hey, it's Drew, and I wanted to have a quick conversation about turning lemons into lemonade. Here are the lemons: skiing, Park City, January 11th, third day, last run, going fast. Light was bad, a lot of snow on the ground, 50 yards from the bottom, I crashed and burned. Literally tumbling down the mountain, did a 3-point landing with my head and 2 thumbs. Broke the right thumb, sprained the left thumb, finished up surgery, 5 days later, and now I have a little extra time on my hands. What do? I finish a special report that I've been dying to finish for a long time, which is a way for me to get to my next book. It's a preview of the book. You can find it on renegade.com. On the very beginning of the homepage at the top, there's a banner that says B2B Special Report. I would love it if you took a look at this and let me know what you thought. I think you're going to find a lot of value in it. Okay, we're back. And I just want to break down, before we move on to your current situation, the DHL, because I remember this case very well.
Yeah,
I remember when it happened. They bought Tiger, right? It wasn't that, what was the name of it?
Yeah, that was some years earlier, but when I was there, it was the acquisition of Airborne Express.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. They bought Airborne, and which was definitely not necessarily competitive to the tightest ship in the shipping business, and you absolutely positively have two brands that have done brilliant marketing and have the product deliver. But what I think is so interesting, and how we can say this was effective marketing, is you created demand.
Yes.
You created demand really quickly, and then the customer tried it and got, okay, you got me the first time, but you can't fool me twice, and shame on me. And that is fascinating and an important thing. So marketing did its job, and in fact did it too well. Right. And maybe in some cases, this is where marketing and sales and logistics could work. Maybe if you hadn't quite spent so much and worked on a niche and so forth, maybe you could sort of worked out the problems. But anyway, that's all water under the bridge. Okay. So I think it is worth, if you are a CMO and you are going into a company that doesn't offer what we'll just call it price of entry service and price of entry support and price of entry sort of competitive, marketing can't fix that. Can we just get that out there?
Absolutely.
Marketing is not a miracle work. Unless, and this is what's so interesting about the world that we live in right now, is the CMO can actually change things like culture. They can change the way the product goes, because they can take real-time customer feedback, go over to the product development team and say, dudes, this is a problem. If you fix these 3 things, complaints will go down, things will, and so marketing and product can work together, and you can make things better. But as I said, we've got to have a base level. And so you don't put yourself in this situation where you're this miracle worker unless you have permission to change the service, to change the product, and to change the culture. Okay, correct. Lecture over. Now we can move on to your current situation. You got to Ryder like 6+ years ago, right?
Yes.
And Ryder's been around a long time. We know it is it's big in the truck rental business, right?
Yeah, we do supply chain, logistics, fleet management, and also rental and used vehicle sales. So quite a big portfolio. I think everybody remembers us as a rental truck company when we were in the consumer business, but it's quite a large portfolio outside of rental as well. Ryder was a client of JWT's when I was
really? In the 80s. Yeah, this is how far back. Okay, yeah, I've been around. Okay, now, so let's talk about, there's the big brand, and the world is changing and this is really interesting to me, is how, in the role that marketers can play in driving innovation in a company. Talk about the sort of where you were and how you started to get to this new innovation that we're going to talk about in more detail. To set the stage, what was the problem you were trying to solve?
Yeah, well, you said it initially when we started talking about Ryder. It's an 85-year-old company, and you know as well as I do, 85-year-old companies have a really hard time innovating and changing. The leopard, trying to change its spots is difficult sometimes. But I will tell you, Drew, about 3.5 years ago, we had a board mandate from our board of directors, which I think was really key in starting to think about the transportation and logistics industry. Where is it headed with the disruption of all these technologies and new capabilities that are coming to play? Think about autonomous, electric vehicles, Airbnb asset sharing, all of that kind of stuff going going on in our industry, it's largely a very physical industry, but it is moving rapidly to digital capabilities. So we were asked to take a look of all the things that were out there, all the buzzwords, IoT and 3D printing, and you name it. What were we really going to need to focus on?
You didn't say AI, machine learning,
it's
or virtual
all
reality.
above.
Come on. Okay, good.
I could add, the list can go on and on and
all
on.
right, fine.
But I think as we thought about real threats to our business, and that's another interesting point. I think a lot of times companies start out thinking in the negative, with the glass half empty. What if this came in and it threatened this piece of our business? And what happened was we figured out halfway through it, and halfway through the exercise of figuring out what we were going to do, that it actually became a fantastic opportunity. So the glass half full. But we narrowed our focus down to 4 areas. One clearly was around big data, and that sort of covers a multitude of sins. Another area was in electric and autonomous vehicles. So we have 285,000 trucks in our fleet. What if we woke up tomorrow and the world went electric, or the world went straight to autonomous? What would that look like for us, and what would that do to our business? We also were combating e-commerce on behalf of our customers. So our customers really feeling like they didn't have an alternative to Amazon, right? How could I get my supply chain totally changed around to be able to deliver within 2 hours to a customer and not have to go through Amazon where the margins are eroding, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a whole work stream and product development around that. But the one area that I really wanted to talk about with you was the asset sharing area. And so we created a product that has just started to blossom, and it has taken off. And I've had the proud privilege of leading that product, which is even cooler for a CMO. And we call it Airbnb meets Match.com for trucks.
Cool. And I know that it has a name and that anybody can download it. So what's the name of the app?
The name of the app is actually Coop, C-O-O-P, by Ryder.com. And, everybody goes, well, what does Coop mean? Well, when we were actually doing our research and talking to customers about what this was, they kept saying, oh, it's kind of like a co-op. Oh, it's kind of like a co-op. And so the name Coop just stuck. There wasn't anything any more powerful than that, but actually it worked. So this application was really interesting. Again, we did all of our homework around it. We found out that 24% of the time trucks sit idle. They're not used. So it's no different than Airbnb. Your vacation homes are not used 100% of the time. How much of that time do they sit idle? And could you actually share your trucks with another business and make money off of being able to share that vehicle? So it is a traditional marketplace in the sense of where marketplaces are HUDed, where there's supply and demand. And we started the product in Atlanta because there was a huge density of truck volume in that particular market. And we've grown now through the state of Georgia. We took on all of the state of Florida. And this year we're headed to Dallas. And it has absolutely beaten all of our expectations. But there was a lot of fear and trepidation about doing this particular product, you can imagine.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that because those are there's always naysayers, and there's always, particularly in a company that's been doing one thing really well for a long time. What were some of the barriers that you encountered, or hurdles that you had to sort of overcome to even get the sort of prototype made?
Yeah, it was interesting. I might back up just a second and tell you one of the biggest hurdles that I had was our CFO at the time looked at me and said, "Are you crazy? You're going to cannibalize our rental business by doing this." And, had to fight the good fight on that one, and kind of went back again with data and statistics that said there's 8 million commercial vehicles on the road today. And between us and our biggest competitor, there's only about 500,000 rental vehicles available to that 8 million unit market. So I don't think that's cannibalization at all. I just think there's huge market opportunity. So we talked through all of those concerns. They were worried that our pricing in the market would erode our price premium, which has not happened. And so, we had a lot of hurdles in that regard. But I think from just kind of internally, I think from a customer perspective, though, some of the biggest challenges we had when we started the product out was insurance. So what happens if, the person that's using my truck gets into a wreck? Yeah. And how am I covered? So we had to go solve for what we called major friction points and barriers to get this product delivered. Insurance was one of them. The other thing is the transfer of Department of Transportation. It's called a DOT number. Has to be transferred over to the user of the vehicle. So how were we going to do that? We had other customers that said, well, I don't know if I want to deliver my apples to a grocer in a truck that's a competitive brand. What if, Whole Foods, I'm just using this as an example, was going to borrow trucks from Wegmans? Would that ever exist? And could people actually overcome the barrier of the brand kind of issue? And I think what's interesting is we found that if you really have a need and you need that capacity, you're willing to toss the brand to the side and close your eyes for a moment.
Isn't that the truth about marketing in general? Close your eyes and toss brand aside. Move on. We got to get those apples to Wegmans.
Yeah, because, it has a real revenue impact at the end of the day. So, it's just examples like that, there were customer barriers, there were internal barriers, but I can tell you that going slowly, using data once again to create matches on our backside of customers that actually had more capacity or less capacity because we have access to that data was a real help in getting the product off the ground. So.
Very cool. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the lessons learned, and we are going to inspire every CMO listener to get a skunk works going to develop something that competes with their current product. We'll be right back. I'm back. I'm not going to talk about skiing, but I do want to talk about the special report that you will find on renegade.com. There is so much meat in this, in the 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy in 2020, that there are probably some folks out there that think I'm crazy to put that out there in front of a firewall. But I'm really hoping to get feedback from some of you all on the report, perhaps what's missing, because again, the book is going to be developed against this outline, but fleshing it out. There might be some guests that could help fill in some of the areas. You may disagree with some of the things. I'm really, really interested in your opinion on this piece, and your engagement with it will really help make the book that much stronger. So you'll find it on renegade.com. Very top, there's a banner that says 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy. Take a look. Okay, we're back, and we've been talking about the development of an app which on first blush might have seemed like you were cannibalizing the business. As it turned out, the category is much, much bigger. Second of all, I'm guessing that many of the users of the apps are not necessarily, what's the overlap between existing customers and users of the app?
Right. So the nice thing about being a startup in your own company is one of the things you bring to the party is a customer base. And I think you should not lose sight of that. A lot of the startups out in California who have great technology ideas don't have a customer base. They've thought of great technology, but they have no one to experiment on. So they come to companies like Ryder and all the big brands to say, hey, let us put our technology into your company explore with your customers, and that can be somewhat risky at times. But it did give us an advantage, Drew, that we thought was really important, because it got us off the ground. So we went to our lease customers and said, hey, we know that you don't use your lease vehicles from us, every day during the week. Here's a way for you to monetize those assets, make your lease payment note and put it into a pool. We vet the drivers, we make the insurance, sure the insurance coverage is there, yada, yada, yada. And so, it's very low risk for you with very high reward if you do it. Now, initially, we spent time with current customers to get the product off the ground. And so I would say that the first 6 months in each market, we depend heavily on current Ryder customers. So 60 to 75% of our initial transactions were from our own customer base. But what happened was, because the product was so compelling, as we started marketing it, doing outdoor billboards, digital advertising, search advertising, all the things that you would expect us to do, we have totally shifted our customer base from current customers are now 30%, and 70% are brand new customers to the company.
Which is awesome.
It's an amazing mix, and that just gives us the opportunity to continue to upsell other services throughout the Ryder portfolio. So again, we're really excited about it. The early days, we've been in the market now for almost 2 years, but the adoption and the pace has been really, really encouraging to us, and we think it has a lot of legs moving forward. So.
And you know what? It's funny. I remember thinking about this when we had a pre-conversation as a framework for this, and then I just blanked. But that's okay. Lots happens. Recall. So yeah. I would suggest that this falls into the category of what we used to call it renegade marketing as service, and the idea is that if you think about marketing for something as a way of delivering a service to existing customers, there's sort of a wonderful win-win. And I'll give you an example. American Express created Small Business Saturday, right? And that is a service. They did that so that there was something that would fall between Black Friday and Cyber Monday that would focus on attention on small businesses. I think in 2019, it was something like 18 billion in sales on that one day that this program did. It's marketing that is a service to your customers. And the beauty of it is you feel really good. You can't go wrong doing something for your customers. Right. And then the opportunity, once you go there, and I'm so glad you mentioned you marketed it first to customers, because if they don't get on board, if they don't see value in it, chances are it's going to be a problem for you. Right. So exactly. you have two things going on. You have this opportunity to say, hey, customers, we're actually thinking about how to increase your revenue. That's what we're spending time. Isn't that cool? We're thinking about your business. Right. Moving more trucks. We're thinking about your business. You have 25% of your truck is just sitting there collecting dust. Here's an app that will push it out. So that's a very powerful insight. And I just want to pause on that as you put others who are listening. What are you doing? What could you develop? This is an app in this case that would be of service to your existing customers that would derive more revenue. Small Business Saturday derives revenue. The Coop app drives revenue. Now, it doesn't sound like old-fashioned marketing to me. It sounds like really smart, cutting-edge kind of stuff, and the tools that are available to do it. Okay, it's not. One of the things that often kills these things, and I thought it was interesting, because you're a big company and you have customers, you have a built-in customer base, but because you have a big company, you have ways you've always done business. The way you do invoicing, there's systems. I mean, here's an app and suddenly you've got different revenue flows and you've got security issues and you have things that you haven't had to deal with. Yes. And those require, and often they don't succeed, because I have a friend who's at a company right now, a giant company, I won't name the name, where they set up a Skunk Works. It was doing great. And then they took the head of the Skunk Works, put him into the main company and said, blend it. And now you have a culture clash because you have this innovative group and you have the parent company who's used to doing business one way. And the parent company is a aircraft carrier that takes 5 miles to stop, let alone turn. Right. So what did you do in this circumstance, or advice can you offer the listeners that help you if you're going to go down this road and you are going to create an innovation that will help your customers do the business, but it required some operational and some cultural changes in the way you think about the business. What's some advice you have to folks about how to get that done in a big company?
Yeah, it is hard, no doubt. And it's really hard when you pit one part of the organization against another. But I think for a startup within a large corporation, it is an absolute necessity to take a team of people and sequester them away from the host and give them the room to do what they need to. The interesting thing is there's still so much leverage that you get from the mothership. But there's so much autonomy that needs to happen, and flexibility and room to spread your wings and try things differently that comes from creating new innovation like this. We actually took what I guess probably the best strategy was we got the guy who ran our rental business and we said, we want you to come over here and run this new thing, which was kind of a risk. So the guy whose business our CFO thought we were going to cannibalize, probably had the best background for understanding renting vehicles and what was going on. So he actually was thrilled to come do this product. And then we handpicked 11 other people at the initial outset. We put them in an office in Miami, and we opened one in Atlanta, and now they have 2 teams operating out of those locations, but they are not in the corporate headquarters. They are totally separate from corporate headquarters. Now, they come back in. They come up here to present what's going on. They come up here to get requests for capital expenditure, all the normal processes that you have to do. But they're allowed their freedom and their creativity. And for us, it's been a great catalyst in hiring kind of like the next generation of young people into our industry who are just excited to be working on this kind of technology and these apps and these types of products. And they don't have to go to California to do it.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing. The value of running innovation and innovative programs and the impact that has on employees, particularly young, cannot be underestimated. Yeah. And if you're a company that's been doing business a certain way in an industry that's doing it, if you don't have some kind of skunkworks innovation project, you're going to really struggle to do that. I love the fact that you mentioned sequestering the team. I don't know if you've seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes.
Did you see it? Right. And remember,
I did.
And so for the listeners, if you haven't seen it, it's a wonderful story. And I think it's a good business story that you as marketers, because the marketing guy actually plays the role as the bad guy, but not to spoil this thing. What's interesting is they try to do it the Ford way and they fail. And then they go off and go on their own and they're given the independence. And sure enough, of course, they had success. And I think you could draw that line, that same scenario over and over again when you were looking for innovation in a big company. So first of all, how cool for you that as a CMO at an 85-year-old company, you've got this little skunkworks app-based future business going that essentially marketing had a really strong role in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's great. I mean, I wouldn't, I think the longer term challenge for us is going to be, and it is for any company, Drew, is at what point, if ever, does it come back into the corporation? And going back to your Ford versus Ferrari story, is that the right thing to do? Is it ever the right thing to do? Or do you actually keep moving forward and spin it out to something very different? But it took a lot of conviction from our leadership. And I will say my boss, the CEO, had he have not supported this, I'm not sure we would have gotten as far as we did. So having that top-down support for doing these things is really, really critical.
And I think it's a great place. I want to wrap up there because no CMO can ever be successful without a CEO that is supportive of the vision and willing to let the marketer run. I also think it was interesting that this was a board level initiative in terms of looking at the future. And when you used your analogy, Airbnb meets like Match, to me, what's interesting is those weren't truck rental. Those were things that are happening in the world that could be relevant to us. And I think as you're thinking about innovation, get out of your category. And again, going back to that first part of the conversation, one of the advantages of being a CMO is worked in other categories is those other categories so you can think like they do. So it's funny, I just also recorded an episode where the final word was stay curious.
Yeah.
I think that applies to this situation. You can't be innovative without staying curious, without looking beyond your category. Well, Karen, first of all, congrats on that in getting this innovation off the ground. I imagine there might be some folks out there that need to rent a truck that will be in one of your stores somewhere soon. I think that you've summarized this pretty well. I'm going to go back one more time and just sort of reiterate what we got. There needs to be, if we're going to innovate, there needs to be some big goals, and to have the CEO and the board of directors driving those, recognizing this sort of intersection of trends and company and opportunity and where you think you as an organization can capitalize on it. You have to build a team. You have to put them in a room somewhere else and allow them some freedom to grow. You talked about going slow. You tested first in one market, then you expanded to others. You address the objections as opportunities along the way. And it's funny, if there weren't any objections, it probably wouldn't have been a very good idea.
That's true. That's true.
You've got to be able, because otherwise it's just too easy for everybody else to do too. And so there have to be some hurdles. And as the leader, you just have to be willing to say, we'll get through those because you have the vision of where you want to go. All right. Karen, thank you so much for being on the show. It's really been a pleasure talking to you. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Drew. And as I always tell my team, it's not if, it's how. It's not if, but how. And speaking of if, when you're done with this show, well, here's my question for you. Are you going to go to, this is the listeners, not you necessarily, go on to iTunes, give us a rating, share the show with a friend, and put your innovation plan together? I hope you do. And until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.